The clock struck midnight at Oakdale State Penitentiary. In Cell Block D, a man once known for delivering messages of salvation, now prepared for his final moments on earth. Pastor Gideon Hale, 54, had traded his crisp white clerical collar for the harsh orange jumpsuit of death row. As guards approached his cell, his hands trembled not around a Bible, but against cold metal handcuffs. 5 years earlier, this same man had stood before a congregation of hundreds, preaching about temptation and righteousness. Now, he walked his final steps down the sterile corridor toward the execution chamber, his footfalls echoing against concrete walls that had witnessed the end of many condemned souls before him. Have you ever wondered how someone who preaches morality every Sunday could end up on death row? What invisible line separates the righteous from the fallen? Today's story might make you question everything you believe about those who stand at pulpits and guide our spiritual paths. In the quiet Midwestern town of Willow Creek, population 12,000, St. Mark's Baptist Church stood as a beacon of community and faith for over 70 years. Its white steeple pierced the sky above elm-lined streets where neighbors knew each other by name, and Sunday services served as the heartbeat of social life. For more than a decade, Pastor Gideon Hale had been the beloved shepherd of this flock, respected, revered, and trusted with the community's deepest confessions. But beneath the polished surface of hymns and sermons lay desires that would ignite a devastating chain of events: a forbidden affair with his church secretary, a brutal murder that shocked the faithful, and ultimately, a death sentence that would divide a community forever. This isn't just another story of a fallen religious leader. It's a cautionary tale about power, secrecy, and the catastrophic consequences when trust is shattered beyond repair. Before we continue, if you value stories that reveal the hidden truths behind seemingly perfect facades, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Our True Crime Village brings you meticulously researched cases every week that don't just shock. They teach us crucial lessons about human nature and the warning signs we all too often miss. Like this video now, if you've ever been surprised by someone who wasn't who they appeared to be. Now, let's return to Willow Creek, where the path to Pastor Gideon's execution began with a simple job posting for a church secretary. Pastor Gideon Hale commanded attention the moment he entered a room. At 48, his salt and pepper hair and confident stride projected an image of wisdom beyond his years. Every Sunday, his deep baritone voice filled St. Mark's Baptist Church with passionate sermons that left his congregation spellbound. He had this gift, recalled longtime church member Dorothy Wilkins, to make Scripture feel alive and personal, like God was speaking directly to you. Gideon's influence extended far beyond Sunday mornings. He counseled troubled marriages, provided guidance to wayward teens, and spearheaded community outreach programs that addressed poverty in Willow Creek's struggling neighborhoods. The town council frequently sought his input on civic matters, and the local newspaper regularly featured his opinions on community issues. His Christmas Eve services were so popular that the church had to host 3 consecutive masses to accommodate everyone. At home, Gideon appeared to embody the very family values he preached. His wife Miriam, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile and nurturing demeanor, complemented his authoritative presence. Their elegant Victorian home on Maple Street became a model for Christian family life. Their teenage children, Emma and Jacob, excelled in both academics and church youth activities. The Hales hosted dinner parties for church elders, organized summer barbecues for the congregation, and opened their home each Christmas for a community celebration. They were what every Christian family aspired to be, said church elder Thomas Bennett. Gideon and Miriam showed us how to balance service to God with family devotion. We all wanted what they had. No one suspected that beneath this pristine image, hairline fractures were forming in the foundation of Gideon's life, pressure points that would eventually break open with devastating force. The first sign of change arrived with a job posting for a church administrative assistant. The position had seen high turnover, as Gideon's perfectionism made him a demanding boss. That changed when Evelyn Monroe submitted her application. At 34, Evelyn was rebuilding her life after a difficult divorce left her raising her 7-year-old son alone. Her resume boasted impressive organizational skills from her previous corporate career, which she'd reluctantly left to prioritize her son's needs. What initially caught Gideon's attention wasn't just her qualifications but her quiet determination. "I need this job," she told him during the interview, her eyes direct and unwavering. "And I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired." She kept that promise. Within months, Evelyn transformed the church office from chaotic to efficient. Her meticulous attention to detail freed Gideon to focus on his ministry. She anticipated his needs, organized his scattered notes into coherent sermons, and interfaced gracefully with difficult parishioners. Their working relationship began as purely professional, a respected pastor and his capable assistant maintaining appropriate boundaries. Congregants noted how Evelyn always addressed him as Pastor Hale in public, her manner respectful and formal. No one could have predicted how these carefully maintained boundaries would crumble, or the devastating price they would all eventually pay. The shift in Gideon and Evelyn's relationship occurred so gradually that neither recognized the danger until they were already caught in its current. Their first months working together maintained strict professionalism, with conversations limited to church business, scheduling, and administrative matters. The turning point came during the church's annual charity drive. Working late into the evening to coordinate donations, they shared a simple meal of takeout Chinese food. As midnight approached, exhaustion lowered their guards. "Do you ever get tired of being Pastor Hale?" Evelyn asked, twirling low mane around her plastic fork. Gideon looked up, startled by the personal question. After a moment's hesitation, he offered a half-smile. "Every single day." That honest admission opened a door neither had intended to unlock. For the first time, Gideon spoke about the weight of his position. The pressure of being perceived as morally infallible, the exhaustion of counseling others through crises while maintaining a perfect public image. "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in everyone else's expectations," he confessed. "The congregation sees me as their direct line to God. What happens when I have my own doubts, my own questions?" Evelyn listened without judgment, offering perspective from outside the fishbowl of church leadership. Unlike church members who placed him on a pedestal, she saw him as fundamentally human. These late-night conversations became more frequent. Church budget reviews stretched into discussions about literature, philosophy, and personal dreams. Gideon revealed his original ambition to teach theology at a university before pastoral duties claimed his life. Evelyn shared her abandoned plans for law school, derailed by an early marriage to her now ex-husband. "We're both living Plan B versions of our lives," she observed one evening. The comment lingered between them, heavy with implication. The emotional intimacy intensified during a church leadership retreat. When Gideon received news that his father had suffered a stroke, Evelyn found him alone in the conference center garden, hands shaking as he ended the call. "He might not make it through the night," Gideon whispered. Without thinking, Evelyn took his hand in hers. The physical contact, their first beyond casual workplace interaction, crossed an invisible boundary. The touch lingered longer than appropriate. When their eyes met, something electric passed between them. Recognition, temptation, possibility. Gideon pulled away first. "I should call Miriam," he said, his voice strained. But the moment had altered something fundamental in their dynamic. In subsequent weeks, excuses for private meetings multiplied. Brush of hands during document exchanges. Standing closer than necessary while reviewing the church calendar. A contact held a beat too long. The first deliberate boundary violation occurred during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to the church office. In the dim emergency lighting, Gideon's hand found the small of Evelyn's back as they navigated the darkened hallway. The touch transformed into an embrace neither could later explain away as accidental. "This can't happen," Gideon whispered, even as his actions contradicted his words. "I know," Evelyn agreed, making no move to create distance between them. That night marked the beginning of their descent. Each subsequent interaction pushed moral boundaries further, justifications growing more elaborate. They crafted a private language of innocent-seeming phrases laden with hidden meanings, developed coded text messages, manufactured reasons for after-hours meetings. What would you do if you found yourself falling for someone you shouldn't? Would you recognize the warning signs of a connection moving beyond appropriate limits? Or would you, like Gideon and Evelyn, convince yourself that feelings this powerful must somehow be justified, even ordained? Every affair begins with a single step across a clearly marked line. For Pastor Gideon Hale, that step would eventually lead him to death row. Their first kiss happened in the church archives, a windowless room in the basement where decades of financial records and meeting minutes gathered dust. What began as brushed fingertips while reaching for the same folder culminated in a passionate embrace neither could later dismiss as momentary weakness. That cramped, forgotten space became their sanctuary over the coming months. "No one will ever understand what we have," Gideon whispered during those stolen moments. "This connection is deeper than what most people experience in a lifetime." For Evelyn, these words validated feelings she tried desperately to suppress. A divorced single mother approaching middle age, she'd resigned herself to focusing solely on her son's future, not her own happiness. Now, unexpectedly, she found herself at the center of an intoxicating romance. "When the time is right," Gideon would promise, his voice low and urgent, "we'll figure out a way to be together properly." These vague assurances sustained Evelyn through the painful reality of watching him return home to Miriam each evening, of sitting through his sermons on family values each Sunday, of maintaining a professional facade during church functions where she stood mere feet from his unsuspecting wife. Their deception required elaborate choreography. They developed a system of coded text messages, references to budget meetings and community outreach planning that allowed them to coordinate rendezvous. Gideon purchased a second phone, paid in cash, used exclusively for contacting Evelyn. They identified the blind spots in the church's security camera coverage and memorized the schedules of the maintenance staff. For weekend encounters, they drove separately to a motel in the next county, arriving and departing at calculated intervals. Evelyn kept detailed mental notes of Miriam's schedule, knowing exactly when church committee meetings or her book club gatherings would keep her occupied. "You're meticulous," Gideon once observed with nervous admiration as Evelyn outlined their strategy for the church's upcoming mission trip, which would give them 3 uninterrupted days together. "I have to be," she replied. "I have more to lose than you." As weeks turned into months, the asymmetry in their emotional investment became increasingly apparent. While Gideon compartmentalized their relationship, Evelyn's feelings intensified. She began envisioning a future where their secret love became public reality. She researched divorce statistics among pastors, studied church bylaws regarding marital separation, and fantasized about blending their families. "My son needs a father figure," she told Gideon during a rare afternoon they spent at her apartment while her child was at school. "He would look up to you." Gideon's response, a noncommittal smile and change of subject, should have warned her. But Evelyn, deep in the throes of what she believed was reciprocal love, missed these subtle signs of his emotional limitations. "We're meant to be together," she would whisper against his chest. "God brought us together for a reason." In retrospect, those words carried a terrible irony that neither could have predicted. Comment below if you've ever witnessed someone living a double life. Did you notice the warning signs before their deception was exposed? Or were you completely shocked when the truth emerged? 18 months into their affair, reality finally pierced Evelyn's carefully constructed fantasy. The catalyst was a church board meeting where plans for the new Family Life Center were unveiled. As Gideon proudly presented architectural renderings, he announced, "Miriam and I have committed to heading the fundraising campaign for the next 5 years." 5 years. The timeline echoed in Evelyn's mind as she took meeting minutes with trembling hands. Later that night, in their usual motel room, she confronted him. "You made long-term plans with Miriam without even discussing it with me," she said, her voice unnaturally calm. "When exactly were you planning to leave her?" Gideon's face registered genuine confusion. "Leave her? Evelyn, I never said." "You promised we'd be together properly," she insisted. "Your exact words." His response came with practiced pastoral gentleness, the same tone he used with unrealistic parishioners. "I care for you deeply, but we need to be realistic. I'm a pastor. My family is my ministry. What we have is precious, but it exists in its own space." The translation was clear. Their relationship would forever remain hidden, a permanent secret running parallel to his public life. Something fractured inside Evelyn that night. The love that had sustained her through months of secrecy and second-place status hardened into something sharp-edged and dangerous. "I understand completely," she replied, her expression revealing nothing of the seismic shift occurring within her. The next day, Evelyn purchased a small digital voice recorder. During their next encounter, it captured every whispered endearment, every explicit detail of their relationship. She began saving their text messages, forwarding them to a secret email account. She documented dates, times, locations of their meetings in a password-protected file labeled Personal Budget. "You seem distracted lately," Gideon noted after their lovemaking now lacked its former passion. "Just thinking about our future," she answered truthfully, though her vision of that future had transformed completely. Evelyn's meticulous nature, once devoted to protecting their secret, now focused on documenting it exhaustively. She secretly photographed Marx's passion left on her body, saved hotel receipts, and even obtained security camera footage from a gas station near their motel by befriending the owner. Each piece of evidence reinforced her new perspective. She wasn't a cherished partner but a convenience, a secret indulgence Gideon enjoyed while maintaining his perfect public image. During a Sunday service, watching him deliver a sermon on integrity with Miriam gazing adoringly from the front row, Evelyn made her decision. Her finger traced the outline of the USB drive in her pocket, a small device containing irrefutable evidence of Gideon's hypocrisy. The annual church fundraising gala was approaching. With hundreds in attendance, including the church board, local media, and community leaders, it would provide the perfect stage for truth to finally emerge from shadow. St. Mark's annual fundraising gala transformed the church gymnasium into an elegant banquet hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from exposed beams, white linen draped long tables, and centerpieces of lilies and roses adorned each setting. The congregation's wealthiest donors mingled with community leaders while volunteer servers circulated with champagne flutes. At the center of it all stood Pastor Gideon in his finest charcoal suit, Miriam radiant beside him in a navy blue dress. They moved through the crowd like royalty, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back. From her position at the registration table, Evelyn observed this performance with cold detachment. Beneath her clipboard lay 5 identical manila envelopes, each containing a USB drive, printed text messages, hotel receipts, and a handwritten timeline of their affair. As the evening progressed, Evelyn implemented her plan with surgical precision. When Elder Thompson stepped away from his wife to refill his drink, Evelyn intercepted him. "A matter requiring immediate attention," she murmured, slipping the first envelope into his hands. One by one, she approached the remaining board members, the retired judge, the bank president, the university dean, and the local doctor. Each received the same package with the same whispered instruction: "Review immediately." The shift in the room's atmosphere occurred gradually. Elder Thompson disappeared into a hallway, envelope in hand. When he returned, his face had drained of color. He pulled the judge aside, their heads bent together in urgent conversation. Within 30 minutes, all 5 board members had gathered in a tight circle near the exit, casting troubled glances toward their pastor. Gideon noticed the disruption midway through his prepared remarks about the upcoming building project. His voice faltered as he observed Elder Thompson approaching Miriam, gently guiding her toward the pastor's office. "An emergency board meeting has been called," the church secretary announced, her voice cutting through confused murmurs. "All other guests please enjoy the remainder of the evening." Behind closed doors, Gideon confronted the evidence laid out on his desk. His denials withered as board members played the audio recordings. His own voice professing love, describing intimate encounters, denigrating his marriage. "You have until morning to clear your office," Elder Thompson informed him. "Your services are terminated, effective immediately." When Gideon arrived home at midnight, Miriam stood in their living room, surrounded by hastily packed suitcases. Her wedding ring lay on the coffee table. 20 years, she said, her voice barely audible. 20 years I've stood beside you, believed in you, defended you. The divorce papers arrived by courier 3 days later, citing moral failings incompatible with the sacred covenant of marriage. News of Pastor Gideon's dismissal tore through Willow Creek with the force of a summer storm. By Sunday morning, the congregation had fractured into opposing camps. Some demanded compassion for a leader who had, despite his moral failure, guided their community for over a decade. Others called for his complete excommunication, arguing that his betrayal nullified years of spiritual guidance. "He counseled me through my own marital issues," said longtime member Linda Hargrove. "How many of those sessions happened while he was cheating on his own wife? It makes me question everything he ever told me." The most surprising development was the community's response to Evelyn. Rather than receiving support as the subordinate party in a power-imbalanced relationship, she faced intense backlash. Anonymous notes appeared on her windshield, "Jezebel" and "Homewrecker," scrawled in angry capitals. Parents withdrew their children from playdates with her son. The church mothers group she once belonged to unanimously voted to remove her. She worked alongside Miriam on charity projects, sat at their dinner table, said church choir director Helen Matthews. That level of deception requires calculation most of us couldn't imagine. What no one anticipated was how Evelyn's isolation would harden her resolve rather than break her spirit. She attended services with defiant regularity, head held high despite whispers that followed her down the aisle. Meanwhile, Gideon's decline accelerated. Forced to vacate the church parsonage, he rented a dingy one-bedroom apartment above the hardware store. Job applications to neighboring parishes received no responses. News of his indiscretion had spread throughout the regional church network. His ministerial license was suspended pending review. Finances dwindling, reputation destroyed, family gone. Gideon sought comfort in whiskey bottles that accumulated in his trash. Residents reported seeing him wandering downtown at odd hours, disheveled and mumbling to himself. The once commanding preacher now averted his eyes when passing former congregation members. 3 months after the exposure, Gideon's downward trajectory intersected with Evelyn's mounting isolation at the local grocery store. Their carts collided in the produce section. Recognition flashed across their faces, followed by a complex emotion somewhere between hatred and grief. "You did this to us," he hissed, hands trembling. "You did this to yourself," she countered, unflinching. Each subsequent encounter around town grew increasingly tense. Gideon began calling Evelyn's phone at midnight, leaving incoherent messages alternating between pleas for reconciliation and bitter accusations. Twice, her neighbors reported seeing his car parked across from her apartment for hours. What drives someone to destroy everything they've built? Is it rage, revenge, or something more profound? A desperate need to reclaim power when feeling utterly powerless? For both Gideon and Evelyn, their carefully constructed worlds had collapsed, leaving only raw pain and the dangerous question of who should pay the ultimate price. October 17th brought a violent thunderstorm to Willow Creek. Rain lashed against windows, and lightning illuminated the night sky in stark, white flashes. At Evelyn's modest 2-bedroom apartment, she tucked her son into bed, soothing his fears about the thunder before retiring to her kitchen to pay bills. The pounding at her door at 11:42 p.m. initially blended with the storm's fury. When it persisted, she peered through the peephole to find Gideon. Soaked, swaying slightly, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "We need to talk," he slurred when she cracked the door, the smell of bourbon heavy on his breath. "My son is asleep," Evelyn whispered harshly. "Go home, Gideon." He pushed past her into the apartment. "Home? I don't have a home anymore. My wife won't speak to me. My children changed their last names. The church I built for 12 years has erased me." "Lower your voice," Evelyn demanded, glancing toward her son's bedroom. "Why did you do it?" Gideon's voice rose despite her warning. "We could have continued. No one needed to know." "Continued?" Evelyn's composure fractured. "You expected me to remain your secret forever, while you played the devoted husband and respected pastor?" Their argument escalated, years of complicated emotions erupting like the storm outside. Evelyn detailed every false promise, Every moment she realized she was merely an accessory to his otherwise perfect life. "You're nothing without me," Gideon shouted, advancing toward her. "I made you important." When Evelyn laughed, a cold, dismissive sound, something shifted in Gideon's eyes. His gaze fell to the kitchen counter where a knife lay beside a half-chopped onion from her interrupted dinner preparation. The movement happened with terrifying speed. His hand closed around the knife handle, and in 3 rapid motions, he plunged the blade into Evelyn's chest and abdomen. Her son's screams from the bedroom doorway finally broke through Gideon's rage. The boy's cries alerted neighbors, who called police. Officers arrived to find Evelyn's body on the kitchen floor, blood pooling across white tiles. Gideon sat at the kitchen table, the bloody knife before him, making no attempt to flee. "She ruined everything I had," he told the first officer on the scene, his voice eerily calm. "Everything I spent my life building. Gone because of her." The State versus Gideon Hale became the most publicized case in county history. National news vans lined the courthouse steps, while journalists fought for limited seats inside. The public's fascination with the fallen pastor overwhelmed the small-town judicial system. Extra security screened entrance, and the judge ordered electronic devices banned after someone attempted to live-stream proceedings. Every morning, spectators lined up before dawn, some driving hours to witness the trial that combined religious hypocrisy, forbidden passion, and brutal violence into a perfect storm of human drama. The prosecution constructed a damning narrative. This was not a crime of impulse, District Attorney Eleanor Simmons told the jury during opening statements. This was the calculated elimination of a problem by a man accustomed to controlling narratives. She methodically presented evidence of Gideon's repeated boundary violations, highlighting the power differential between pastor and employee. Phone records revealed his increasingly threatening messages. Neighbors testified about his car regularly parked outside Evelyn's home in the weeks before her murder. The medical examiner detailed the deliberate, forceful nature of the stab wounds, consistent with determined intent rather than momentary passion. Defense attorney Martin Klein painted a different portrait, a respected community leader broken by public shame. Pastor Hale lost everything, his marriage, career, reputation, in a single night, Klein argued. His actions, while inexcusable, occurred during a psychological breakdown after months of deteriorating mental health. A psychiatrist testified about Gideon's depression and alcohol dependency following his exposure. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Given the premeditated nature of the crime and the trauma inflicted on Evelyn's son, who witnessed his mother's death, the jury recommended the death penalty. Judge Caroline Webster's sentencing statement resonated throughout the courtroom. "Mr. Hale, you held a position of exceptional trust in this community. You were entrusted with people's faith, their spiritual guidance, their moral compass. Your betrayal of that sacred trust, culminating in this act of violence, represents the most profound abuse of power this court has witnessed. May God have mercy on your soul." Cell 342B became Gideon Hale's world for 5 years. The 8x10 concrete space contained a metal cot, stainless steel toilet, and small desk where he penned his controversial memoir, Fallen from Grace. Others found raw honesty in his self-examination. "Power warps perception," he wrote. "I began believing I was exceptional, that rules governing ordinary men didn't apply to me." During his incarceration, only his younger child, Jacob, visited twice in 5 years. His daughter never responded to his letters. Miriam finalized her divorce 6 months after his conviction, reverting to her maiden name. Meanwhile, Evelyn's parents launched a $15 million wrongful death lawsuit against St. Mark's Church, alleging negligent oversight enabled Gideon's predatory behavior. The church settled for an undisclosed amount, the funds established in trust for Evelyn's son, who entered intensive therapy for post-traumatic stress. As Gideon's appeals exhausted and execution date approached, media attention resurged. Religious commentators debated forgiveness, rehabilitation, and justice. Prison officials noted Gideon spent his final days in prayer and reflection, declining most interview requests. His last statement, delivered moments before lethal injection, echoed through news cycles nationwide. "I constructed my life on appearances rather than substance. My position became my identity. When that identity was threatened, I destroyed another human being rather than face my own emptiness. There is no adequate atonement for that choice." Share this video if you believe power and position should come with greater accountability. How many tragedies could be prevented if we recognized the warning signs of authority misused? The execution of Pastor Gideon Hale left Willow Creek permanently altered. Mark's church attendance dropped by 60%, and 3 years later, the congregation still struggles to rebuild. The imposing building that once hosted standing room-only services now echoes with empty pews and whispered doubts. Trust, once broken at this magnitude, doesn't heal quickly, explains Dr. Elaine Foster, a psychologist specializing in community trauma. When someone positioned as a moral authority commits such a profound violation, it challenges fundamental beliefs about judgment and safety. This case exemplifies how power, when concentrated without appropriate oversight, creates dangerous blind spots. Gideon's position shielded him from accountability until it was too late. Church board members later admitted ignoring early warning signs. His controlling tendencies, boundary issues with staff, resistance to financial transparency, because his charisma and results seemed to justify these minor flaws. The ripple effects extended beyond Willow Creek. Across the country, religious organizations implemented stricter supervision protocols and mandatory counseling for leadership. Background checks intensified, and many institutions established anonymous reporting systems for ethical concerns. Gideon's case joins a troubling pattern of authority figures whose public righteousness masked private corruption. From televangelists caught in financial fraud to spiritual leaders exposed for exploitation, these cases follow a predictable trajectory. Exceptional talent creates devoted followers. Admiration transitions to unquestioning loyalty. Oversight diminishes as reputation grows. Exploitation occurs in shadows. Exposure triggers catastrophic collapse. The most haunting element remains Evelyn's son, now 13, who continues treatment for trauma. His grandmother reports he refuses to attend any church and struggles with authority figures in school. Evelyn's parents established a foundation advocating for workplace protections against power abuse. Their annual conference trains organizations to recognize warning signs before tragedy strikes. Perhaps the most profound lesson is how gradually ethical compromises accumulate. Gideon's path from respected pastor to death row inmate didn't occur in one dramatic leap, but through incremental choices that slowly eroded his moral foundation. If this examination of human frailty and power's corruption resonated with you, subscribe to True Crime Village for more stories that delve beyond sensational headlines to expose the psychological truth behind criminal behavior.